The Moreness Show with hosts Syl and Beena is about to bring depth and value into your life.
Hello and welcome to the Moreness Show with Syl and Beena, and we are here again today. And today we have kind of a mysterious topic that because Syl says that we are going to talk about capital L learning and language, importance and value of language, which is quite interesting. This is okay. Yes, he's showing me signs that okay, it is connected. Of course, it is connected, but I'm just making it. First thing I'm going to ask Syl today is that what is the difference between regular learning and capital L learning? Because this is something, of course, everybody when saying that, okay, oh, you have your own term, but we all learn. Of course, we all learn, but we don't learn in that specific way. And what actually capital L learn means to us, this is what we are going to share and discuss today. So welcome to the show, Syl.
Thank you. Thank you. And oh, you said so. I was just about to say, by the way, I'm Syl, and that's Beena, my marvelous, wonderful co-host. Because somebody listening, it's the show with Syl and Beena. And if we don't say like I say, hi Beena or you, then if you've never heard, it could easily be the other way around, right? Some people have never heard the word Beena, the name Beena. It could be a man's name, and Syl could be short for Sylvia, right? It's not short for anything. It's just Syl, right?
Yes.
Anyway, yeah.
Very much so.
So I thought I'd introduce myself just in case.
Yes.
Right? Syl, Sabastian, and Beena, Sid, just in case.
Yes.
All right, capital L learning. And what's the difference in regular learning? Would you say, Beena, when you engage in capital L learning and it happens, right, you are changed as a result?
I have changed. I am changing, and I know that because of my experience. Yes, I'm changing.
Right.
Yes.
So when we capital L learn, that's what it means. We grow, we change as a result, right? Rather than in regular learning, which is just the acquisition of data, of information. Yeah. So regular learning is more information storage. Doesn't really mean much, especially in our world today, where you have ready access. You don't need to remember everything. What's the capital of Bulgaria? Sofia. Okay?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Easy. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. Right? What's the capital of Czechoslovakia? Oh, Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. Oh, well, it used to be Prague, but okay, right? So, stuff that sticks in my head, I still know those things, but they're not critical. You can figure them out. But back in the day, many things to remember were relatively important, right? Because that memory connected you to what was going on. All right, knowing the capital of the world wasn't all that important, but what is important was to know at least where countries are, more or less, and just to have a sense of the world, geography, history, stuff like that, and just to understand science, physics, maths, all the different subjects, so that you have a little bit of an awareness of what's going on. But still, it's still a memory-intensive process. However, when we learn something innately, like riding a bicycle, this is a whole different process. First of all, I don't think anybody's ever read any instructions for riding a bicycle, right, Beena?
Yes, most
and
likely.
Even though they conceptualize riding a bicycle inaccurately, if you ask most people what's the skill of riding a bicycle, they'll tell you balance. Nothing to do with balance. You don't need balance to ride a bicycle, right? And you can watch parents when they're behind the child and their hand is hovering there by the saddle, right? And the bicycle is going very slowly and the poor child's trying to balance, right? And then they catch them when they're unbalanced. You can't balance on a bicycle that's riding slowly. Why? Because the gyroscopic effect of the wheels hasn't kicked in yet, and the wheels right themselves when they turn at a certain revolution. It doesn't take very much. You have to go very fast, but as soon as you get to that minimum speed, the bicycle rights itself. This is not taught ever. Right? I've never ever heard anybody share or teach what the principle of riding a bicycle is. when you demonstrate this and show this, riding a bicycle becomes a very simple exercise. A matter of logic. Well, I have to get up minimum speed. I understand what's involved. I now know what's involved. As soon as I do that, at first I have to take it on faith because I haven't experienced this writing effect, right? I have to just trust it.
Yes.
But
Yes.
once you do, then you see it and you feel it. Right. You know, you go nice and fast. You start to lean the bike and you feel that happening, right? So now you know this from experience and you know it in your body, right? You've changed. Now that you have this knowing, you don't need to remember the details of it. I can forget all about the gyroscopic effect. I get on a bicycle, I start pedaling, and I go. That's it. I know I need to get up to minimum speed. I might not even consciously remember that I get up to minimum speed. I simply do it. Yeah. This is, now that's still under regular learning, but when you understand why, you know why, then you have capital L learning, right?
Okay, so the first
understand
question,
that depth, that moreness.
Okay. Yes, first thing, as you mentioned that, okay, that it is not about memorizing anything. It is not like, okay, try to collect data and then, okay, yes. But when you share that example, analogy of bicycle, okay, how to learn to actually ride a bicycle. This is something like, okay, we develop a muscle memory because this is the term right here. We all have that. And that muscle memory, it can come only by practice, by using that muscle in that specific way. So what's the difference between the muscle memory and the capital L learning?
With capital L learning, you are adding the awareness and the understanding, which usually also entails some discernment. You know why it is so. You aren't just doing it out of rote. You know exactly why. When you understand the underlying principle of what makes a bicycle work, the gyroscopic effect. Wow, that's quite a marvelous thing, the gyroscopic effect.
Yes.
To me, it's like magic. Why should that be? Why should a spinning wheel right itself? Right?
Okay.
Make itself go vertical. Why? Okay, maybe that, the technical guys can explain it to you and all that. But still, to me, it's a magical effect. Right? But I now know why it's happening because of this effect. And now you can extrapolate that into other things. Oh, I now understand why the bicycles or the motorbikes, when they're racing motorbikes, to lean so excessively. Yes, because they're going very fast. And they have to counteract that effect, right? So you understand things a little more. And then you say, wow, this is like one of the sort of principles of nature, like the aerodynamic effect or, like induction. There are many of these things, but also you can understand other principles. For instance, and this is part of our topic here, our language works. Very few of us really think about it. And that's capital L learning. You're always getting to a more, an extra layer, and the layer under that, and the layer under that. So now we are going to look at learning connected to language. Right. So when I have any kind of learning, what do we do when we have a mass of information and data and we need to get a grip on it? Okay, so let's say I'm going to the military, or I'm starting up some, I don't know, and instead of having the typical organization they have, they just have 100,000 people. That's it.
Yes.
They're not organized in any way. Oh man, this is difficult to deal with 100,000 people, right?
Yes.
Well, I need to sort them out. Well, first of all, instead of calling them 100,000 people, I call them an army. Okay. Yeah, well, that's still kind of a bit unwieldy. Okay, well, then I break down the army and I say, well, all right, let's take the army and we split it in two. Okay, I got brigades. And then from the brigades, I split those in two again, or three. Okay, now I got regiments. Well, regiment, a regiment's what, like 600 people, something like that. I think it varies depending on the army, more or less. Still a lot. Okay, well, I split it into companies. Well, a company like 200, still a lot. All right, well, let's split them into platoons, right? And then even in platoons, sometimes they even split those up into sub-platoons, like 2, 3 groups. Right? Platoon usually 15, 12,
I
around
heard
there.
the term battalion, so yes.
Right, a battalion is very large. Battalion,
Okay.
yes. I forgot about
Okay.
battalion. Battalions up there, up higher than regiment. So, yes.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, but now the point is, I've taken a large, massive information and I've conceptualized it into groupings. Yes.
Hmm.
And I've said, okay, I've got my army, I've got my battalions, I've got my regiments, I've got my companies, I've got my platoons, I've got my sub platoons. There you go. Right. And now it's easy to deal with. Yes, I can get the grasp from the ground level up. I might not remember every single platoon because, well, I don't know, probably hundreds of platoons in an army, but it doesn't matter. I understand the unit, and from there I can work. So I've made a conceptual framework that now allows me to grasp this information in a meaningful way and also to be able to use it and work with it.
Hmm.
Now we do the same thing. I'm using this example not as an example of organization, but as an example of language.
Hmm.
We do the same thing with language. We've got the world. We don't just say, okay, the world, and there's a lot of stuff in it, and it's just stuff, right?
Hmm.
Like we say, well, a lot of people in the military,
Yes.
right? No, it's an army, and then you got the air force. It's all grouped, and it's put into conceptual packages that we can comprehend. Any database on your computer works in exactly the same way. Right? They do the same thing. Yes. So tagging,
Yes.
very important. The tagging, it tells you how to get here. Okay, I can get to my platoon via the company. I can get to my platoon via the individuals. I can get to my platoon via the corporal and the sergeant, and the lieutenant, because that's typically a platoon. Each platoon has
Yes.
a lieutenant. So it's avenues to access. Our brain does the same thing. But we have multiple terms as well for the same thing because you're coming at it from a different angle, right? A different approach. Just it's a wonderful way because the world isn't static. So we divide the world up. We say we've got nature and we've got science and buildings and art stuff and we've got all sorts of stuff. Then nature you start to divide trees, animals, etc.
Yes.
All of this is so. Now here's the point that I'm sort of trying to come to. Beena, you know what a tree is, yes?
Yes.
Have you ever seen two trees that are the same?
No, never.
Not once, never.
Never.
Right. However, you can recognize tree, even though they're all different. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Why? Have you ever in your life gone and said, went to look up tree in the dictionary?
No, never. Yes.
No. And
Yes.
what it says in the dictionary about tree, you have no idea. Right? You don't
Exactly.
remember what it says.
Exactly.
But if I were to ask you what is a tree,
Yes.
yeah, what would you
Okay.
say?
Okay. So the tree is a living creature or living being which is coming out of, is sprouting from the ground, and that have trunk and the roots and the branches and the tree leaves and
What
fruit.
about trees in swamps that are in the water?
Yeah, perfect.
There's still ground
Yes.
underneath. Okay. All right. I'm just teasing a bit. And what else? Right?
Okay, so this is how we get this, and they have a particular shape. Of course, not exactly the same, but they have a particular shape because the trunk is going to be like in the middle between roots and the branches. This is how we understand that. Okay, it's a tree, and then we have branches, and then we have leaves and petals and flowers and fruits and everything, and they produce. They have a particular energy which they produce. So tree is not something.
Very nice. And addition to the typical dictionary, I don't think you'll see that in most dictionaries, but that's very
Okay,
cool.
okay, because they are contributors. They are contributors, and you can feel that. Human beings can feel that energy because we take a lot of advantage from them. So yes, when we define something, it needs a bit of thoroughness, of course. We will continue after a short commercial break, and Syl will share more about this.
Yes. All right.
Thanks so much.
See you soon.
Mike Zoric, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to the Moreness Show with Syl and Beena. And Syl was sharing things about the importance of learning, capital L learning. I just want to add something about this because he asked me a question about Beena. Just randomly, he asked that, okay, what is tree? Just define it. And when I was sharing, and Syl said, okay, you cannot find, most likely you will not find this type of definition and explanation about trees. Because I was able to do that just because of that the capital L learning or capital R receptivity is so instilled in my system. So that question was like literally like was a curveball that, okay, how to do that? I was not afraid of it because I know that because of my practice, because of my experience, that it is going to come. Because there is something, it really is turn on something in your mind which unlocks your understanding of things which you never considered to be like really thinking about that someone is going to ask me. And at least I was not expecting, in general, we don't expect that some adult are going to ask it. Okay, maybe a child will ask that, okay, what is tree? So then you will explain that tree is this then, and you will draw. Most likely, we draw that rather than explaining what tree is. And people just show the pictures, yes, and then show the visuals that, okay, this is tree. And this is the difference between capital L learning and regular learning. But most likely, how we teach children in our schools that, oh, this is butterfly, we show the picture and the visuals. And then, oh, this is tree and this is sky and all these things. But in case of, if you don't have this thoroughness, if you haven't developed this understanding, you will not be able to understand and explain things which are out of your knowledge, out of your data. And this is the difference, major difference between capital L learning and regular learning, that you can understand and you can explain and describe things which are out of your data. So, okay, so please continue.
Yes. All right. So now I used a concrete example, something physical. But capital L learning is about understanding the moreness, the abstract depth, right? Now we say, okay, with a tree, it's very simple,
Yes.
This is, yes, you understand what a tree is because it's got a particular shape and structure and function, etc., right? So there's that kind of understanding. But let's apply this understanding rather than remembering. That's the difference between capital L learning and regular learning. One is based on understanding, the other one is based on remembering. Now, just to make a caveat, capital L learning, sometimes some remembering is required, especially when things are non-obvious and surprising. and they don't have a logical flow, and you need to remember. Or something like your password that you need. Some things just need to be remembered, right? But there are many things we don't need to remember. You can figure it out as you go through it, right? But what you do need to remember is process. Not the specific process, but capital P process. The ability to figure out, that's process, right? So I may refigure something out and I go a different route. Doesn't matter. I get to the same end every time, right? That's capital L learning. The ability to figure out, the ability to understand, the ability to discern, the ability to become aware, right? That's what it entails. Now, let's take what capital L learning is itself, and we say, okay, let's sort of make this. We've been making a bit of a dictionary definition, but let's come at it in a different way to understand it. It's connect capital L learning to language. That's where I was heading with tree, right? Or we can say love. Yes, there used to be a cartoon strip when I was a kid. Love is little short, squat figures. A cute little girl, cute little guy, and always love is, and then some little story, and then it said and every cartoon it had a different definition of what love is, right? So and they're all accurate, right? There's a zillion definitions of love. Yet it's hard to define love, but we still know it.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Or at least we think we do. A lot of times we kind of get it wrong too, a little bit.
Yes.
But okay. Right? And so we learn. Now, I'm saying that when we have a concept of something, we may not be able to express a precise definition, but that conception is what helps us to move and grow and work on, right? And the conception matters. Capital L learning is when the conception is valid, accurate, valuable, and useful.
Yes.
For instance, riding a bicycle, you can learn to ride a bicycle, and your conception of why you ride the bicycle, well, I learned how to balance on the bicycle, and you think, wow, I'm very good at balancing. There's nothing to do with balance, right? Unless you ride very slowly, the bicycle balances itself. So you can do something and even have the incorrect conception, which, right, it's not a big issue when it comes to bicycles, but it is a big issue when it comes to other things. For instance, if you try and ride a unicycle, same thing. You need a minimum speed. You understand this? Okay, maybe if you see the unicyclists and they go back and forward and they are balancing. There is balance on you. All right. So now it comes into it. So understanding is very useful. And sometimes I'm not finding a good example now. All right, riding a bicycle and misunderstanding isn't very crucial.
Okay, yeah? I can share an example for that, because you shared it many times with me and of course with other participants, that there was an incident that some woman asked you that, will you please help in some medical emergency, because she was not able to drive a car, and you were there. Okay, she might not ask you.
Oh,
yes.
Yes, what a famous story, right? This is when I was a boy. Yes, Karen, you tell the story.
Yes. So Syl shared this story with us, and that was really surprising for me, but also very eye-opening, because he mentioned that woman would really needs to get into car and drive it to emergency.
And her car was in the garage, her personal car.
Yes, and she had that car.
I don't know if the husband must have left his car there because it wasn't the neighbor's car. So,
yes, right. And she had that. But she couldn't do this. And then when Syl was saying that, she actually said that I don't know how to drive this. What type of car it was, Syl?
It doesn't matter. She said she got into the car and said, "Oh, I can't drive it. This is a Ford and I drive a Chevy." Just for argument's sake.
That was really mind-blowing. But this is what
to me it was incredible. It was incredible that an adult could have this limitation. You never learned to drive a car, a motor vehicle. You didn't understand the basic principles. You learned it so specifically that just because the gear lever was in a different place, and now suddenly you could do. And this was an emergency. Like she had to take one of the kids got injured, and they had to take it to the hospital. It wasn't all right for that situation, but still, it could have been. It could easily have been. It freaked me out to some extent. I could
Exactly.
not believe that an adult could be that dysfunctional.
But this is how we are. This is how our learning process is. Okay,
Right.
not if this was an extreme case that where she was saying that.
Right.
But this is not very uncommon because
Right.
you can observe it in your regular life, and people say that, oh, I'm used to with iPhone, I cannot do the Android, and this is very okay. Android people say that, oh, I cannot do the Apple or iPhone, and this is very common. Okay, people get puzzled. We saw that, okay, on live, in lives are during lives, and of course in our sessions, that people come with MacBook and they say, oh, I don't know how to download file. Okay, but this is my MacBook. I need to figure it out. So, but the concept. So always keep asking them that, okay, what is the basic concept? Okay, my words might change. Okay, place might change, situation might change, but the
Right.
concept is going to stay and constant.
Right.
And this
Right.
is the conception clarity and understanding,
Exactly.
which actually differentiate
Exactly.
the capital L learning with the
Right.
regular learning.
Right. I mean, if you understand a car, right, the engine starts up and it's in neutral. Why is there neutral? Because, well, if you started the car and it started to go, that would be a bit chaotic, right? You kind of wouldn't have
Yes.
control. So, so in other words, now you got to start the car and then you're taking it out of park, which is a safety, and you're putting it into gear, and the gear is what makes it go. Okay, you put it into gear, and then okay, you can have the foot on the brake. The car's trying to go. You can ease up on the brake, and then you give gas. Okay, and you've got different gears, which is driving a manual. You've got a clutch, and that's what you need to change the gears. If you understand how it works, it doesn't matter what kind of car you get in. Okay, so the gear lever, instead of sitting on the between the seats, it's up on it's on the handle on the steering column. It doesn't matter. It's the same concept. It's a gear lever that you're using to change gears, whether it's here
Okay.
or there. What's the difference, right? Doesn't
course.
matter. Yeah. So you understand the conception of it and you can adapt. Unlike that mother who could not adapt because she did not have conceptuality in her mind. She had a specific thing. You go here precisely. She learned like you train a robot in a car manufacturing plant, right? It's precise. They can't really adapt. All right, they're not true robots in the sense they can think for themselves. Today with AI, they have a bit more flexibility. But those things are trained exactly precisely. You move the thing and they just repeat the rhythm, right? Repeat the sequence of events exactly.
Yes.
And that's how that woman was. She had no adaptability. It was just too astonishing to my brain, right?
Okay, this analogy is very interesting because, okay,
Yeah.
yes, at one point I was just laughing that, okay, oh yes, okay, how a person, an adult can be like this.
Yes.
But then it really opens up a lot of things for me because first to understand that, okay, what we are trying to learn, what is the objective? And when we lose that, then we get into the specifics and everything because there is no abstract conception there. The abstract conception or the understanding was that, okay, you need to drive a car to reach somewhere. Okay, that's the basic thing. I know that, okay, it sounds very basic, but we have to understand what are the goals, what are the motives of learning. Unfortunately, we don't have that. Clarity of motives behind that is always missing. Because if you have this understanding, a bigger picture, then you will learn the bigger picture and the concept also. Otherwise, you will get into locals, and then it can, of course, overwhelm you in many situations. Everything
Yes.
new is going to overwhelm. And this is the problem with the regular learning. But, okay, I have a question. That's why I was just wrapping it up, because what are the benefits of capital L learning in our regular life for students, for a housewife, for a mom, for a dad, for a kid,
Good question. Good
anyone?
question.
So please.
It makes learning a whole lot easier. Why? Because if you understand the mechanism of learning, you now say, oh, yes, all right, let's say I'm learning geometry. Yes.
Okay.
And, well, how do you figure out the area of a circle? Pi radius square, I think, if I remember the formula correctly. Well, all right, that's something I need to remember. Why is that so? Okay, when you went into math, they sort of explained why. And, well, it just happens to be that pi, which is, what is pi? 2.33, I think it is, or 3.22, something like that. Well, this particular quantity, right? And it's not limited. But when you take that, it just happens to be that if you take the radius and the area and you square it and you multiply, then you get to that. So it works out very nicely. Yes. Now somebody figured this out at some point, maybe some trial and error, and it just happens to be that that's so. Oh, okay. Well, there's no way around it. You just got to remember it. In today's world, I'm going to go look it up on Google, right? But back in the day, there was no Google. Yeah, there were libraries that you could go look up, but that was kind of a hassle. So remembering it was very useful. But here's the key, though. Now, if you understand the conceptuality, which means that, the area of something, and you're figuring it out according to a specific formula, right? And that's it. And there's an easy way to do this. And, right, when you take a square, it's very easy. You take one side, you multiply it by the other side, and you get the area. Very simple, right? So when it gets to more complicated shapes, like a circle, a little bit more complicated, or a triangle, a little bit more complicated. But if you think of a triangle as half of a square, well, okay, that's it. You take it in, divide by half, then you got this. So very easy, right? So now this is the fun part. Well, it's not the only way to work out the area of a triangle, but you can get into the math thing. But you're still understanding the concept of what area means. You're understanding the concept of the formula and why they are this way, right? And so that makes your learning easier. So when you are learning, like in school subjects, if you can minimize the amount of things you have to remember, it's so much easier, right? And especially if you can also make it so that when you do need to remember, you've got mnemonic cues that stimulate your brain to say, okay, right, this, that, and that, and then you connect it. And so it's, again, you're not remembering things by rote, by memory. It's contextual and it stimulates you. You've got that association going. Our brain is a champion at association. When you look at people who do real massive feats of memory, right? And you can go look this up. That's always about association. I like make a little rhyme for the thing and to remember it, right? And so there are kind of tricks to facilitate learning. It's association. Again, understand the conception, right? It's not to say, you have a little rhyme to remember it. The bigger concept is association.
Bigger concept, exactly as you are saying, bigger concept. And we will continue after this break. And Syl will share. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please come back soon.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Here we are again, Syl, and you were taking time to explain that, which is, of course, important and necessary. I'm repeating my question again. What are the basic, very basic benefits and how they can implement, like a housewife, normal laborers and women, and the students and everyone, how we can implement capital L learning and get benefits of it.
All right, so we implemented, and this is where I was going, by connecting it to language.
Yes.
When we have language like tree, we don't know the dictionary definition. We have a conception of what tree is. Even if we can't articulate that conception, we have it, right? Can't necessarily say it exactly. But we're already using this mechanism to sort all of the information that is the world into things, right? So we've got trees and cars and whatever, buildings, and then we've got stuff we don't know, the unknown, other, who knows, whatever, right? So we have a category for unknown. So when we learn to conceptualize, it not only makes our lives easier, but also more accurate. So how does this apply, for instance, let's say, oh, well, I'm a history student. How do I conceptualize history? Well, if you take, okay, you know, when I was at school, high school, we studied European history, Western history, you know, in the beginning of the century, right? More or less around the Second World War. All the events that led up to it and all this, right? And then that was our First World War, Second World War. There was still, at that time, it still had a lot of influence, right? There were people who remembered it, like my parents grew up during the war, and obviously their parents, you know, fought in the wars and stuff like this, right? So it was still a very big world influencing event. But you say, well, how do I sort of remember this? A lot of dates, this happened, this happened. If you conceptualize it, what was the world about? Oh, power struggle. All right, okay, well, now it's very much simplified. And who is involved in the power struggles? Okay, you got, you know, this side, that side, you got these groups, and then the ship change. Okay, much easier to do. And then you can say, okay, let's conceptualize it. This all happened in the first part of the century. Okay, that's it. So now you know more or less. Well, the two key dates, really, or maybe 4 key dates, is the start and the end of the 2 world wars. First World War, 1914 to 18, Second World War, 1939 to 1945. Those become very key points. You say, well, okay, I just have to make the effort to remember this. Why? Because they are key to everything else. Because now, if you've got 1939 as an anchor point, you can say, well, all right, you know, what led up to the war? Well, a lot of stuff led up to the war. You can go all the way back to the First World War, which directly contributed to the Second World War. The way they ended the First World War, they put massive fines and penalties and all of the stuff, and it caused total havoc in Germany. And this led to people rebelling because it was like over punishment. They wanted, it doesn't work, right? And the Second World War, afterwards, for the whole Marshall Plan, they did the reverse. Instead of those extreme punishments and basically bankrupting the country, which you're punishing the poor people, the everyday people that they didn't start the war. It was the guy at the top that started it, you know. So you're conceptualizing, right? And that's the point that I'm making. How does it help you? You asked me, conceptualize it in a way that makes it useful for you, and that you can now, instead of having a lot of data that you need to remember, you've got this overall conceptions. Conceptions are easy to remember. Why? Because the brain automatically remembers the concept. It doesn't remember the data that goes to the concept. That is automatically associated, like with tree. You never read a dictionary definition of a tree, but you could more or less define it. I mean, if you took a bit more time, you'd be a bit more accurate, but you can do it, right? So the brain automatically takes the concept and associates the explanation to it, right? Does it automatically. Use that mechanism. Instead of trying to remember each little data point, remember the conception. The associated stuff that goes with that conception will all be there. Make sense?
Okay. Yes.
That's how you use it.
So the first is clarity of concept or conception behind that. And of course, the second is association management. Of course, you are going to associate things which are relative and pertinent to this particular thing. And this is how you are going to eliminate the need of remembering it, because your mind is going to store the data in that organized way. Actually, for me, this is the whole capital L learning is having data sorted out in the most efficient way so then you can access it. And also you can multi-use it, multi-purpose it, because this is multitasking also, as we say that, because the concept, once you have the understanding of the concept, you don't need to learn everything from the scratch, because you know that, okay, how I'm going to get to the concept, and then I'm going to that. So there are some steps involved. There are some steps involved into this when people have this understanding of a concept, and you have to follow that. Of course, we will go into this detail, but I want you, Syl, to just, okay, jump a bit from concept clarity and association management to the importance of language in capital L learning. Capital L learning, sorry. Yes.
Right. So language automatically is using associations and conception. A tree isn't, because trees are all different. So we understand an abstract concept of what tree is, and then we can recognize all the variety and multitude of trees. Right? Fantastic.
Yes.
There's so many of them, right? And we sort of understand when a tree is not a bush, right?
Yes.
We know this too. Right?
Yes.
So we know things without knowing them. And this is because we have a conception of it. When we start to apply this to life in general, it starts to change the way you think. For instance, I used to play a lot of golf. And I was a very good golfer, and I'm actually an even better golf teacher. Why? Because of conceptions. Most people think of golf. If you ask somebody who never played golf before, what is it? Well, you got to hit the ball, you got to hit it up into the air. Right? That's what people think golf is. Yeah.
Yes.
But this is actually, golf is wonderful for this, because golf. First thing I tell a golf student, I say, golf is a game of opposites. You're not actually going to hit the ball up into the air. You might be able to if you tee it up, fine. But if the ball is lying on the ground, how do you hit it up into the air? You're going to have your club go underneath the ground and then get to the ball to hit it up into the air. So, and you can see people try and do this, right? They try and kind of, it doesn't work. And they hit behind the ground, they chunk it, and then it's a mess, right? Did you know that when a ball spins backwards, right, it creates an aerodynamic effect, and then it creates a little vacuum, and then the vacuum sucks the ball up, and that's what makes the ball fly. Backspin. Wow, okay, wow, I didn't know that. Okay, so now you also realize that spinning ball, those little dimples on the golf ball, they are there to create that aerodynamic effect, okay? And so the way the ball spins determines how it flies. All conceptions, in other words. So now also you say, well, how do you hit the ball off the concrete? So you land on the golf cart path, right? And your ball is lying on concrete. How do you now hit the ball up in the air? Because the club isn't a square thing, it's not like a mallet, right? It's got an angle. And if you simply drag that club face across the ground, and the ball is there, where's the ball going to go? It's going to bounce at an angle relative to the club face, right? Well, duh.
Yes.
Okay. So in other words, you have to get out of this concept of hitting the ball up in the air, and you have to actually hit down on the ball. Here's the ball. You want your club. You want to do like when you're on table tennis and you put backspin on the ball, right? Well, that's what you're going to do in golf, because that makes the ball fly. But it's going to be forward and back. So you've got to let the club do the work. And this is very hard for some people, because they don't let go of the concept. When they don't have the conceptuality, they cannot do it, because they're trying in their minds to do something that's impossible. And that's why so many people struggle with golf, right? They're trying to do something that's impossible. It's just fascinating. So now I'm making this example with golf to get a little bit technical and specific to golf. But the point is that conceptuality, it makes the game very difficult for them, and they struggle, right? And the majority of golf is the most played game in the world. Soccer is the most watched game in the world. Golf is the most played game, right? Very interesting.
Yes.
And there's millions and millions, probably, I don't know, could be close to 1 billion by now, but anyway, tens of hundreds of millions of people playing golf that struggle unnecessarily because they never learn to conceptualize. They don't understand what they're doing. What they think they should do is actually inaccurate. Golf is all about, that's why golf is so brilliant. It's so marvelous. Really got to change your thinking and do everything kind of opposite, right? It's fantastic. It really is fantastic. And, in the end, you don't even hit with your arms. You hit with your body. You don't even hit, right? Just move your shoulders and that's it, right? It's effortless. When you play golf with grace, you can ask Biala about golf with grace. She wrote a book called Golf with Grace, right? Now, it's completely opposite to what you imagine. You see, you think, it's a lot of effort. You gotta really smack the ball as hard as you can. No, when you're playing golf appropriately, it's almost effortless, and it's a magical thing. You're doing nothing, and then the ball goes, zoom, it goes. I don't know, wow, how did that happen? It's the most incredible feeling. It's truly astounding. But all because of conceptuality, and that's what I'm trying to say. When we learn to conceive the world and conceptualize, we are utilizing the natural mechanism of language. What is the natural mechanism of language? Grouping, association, conception. Any of our words are actually abstract conception. Table, chair, tree, car, abstract conception. Why? Because there are so zillions of tables. I had a friend who was into interior decor, and she had this book of chairs, a physical book, and it was this great, big, huge, thick book. Chair upon chair upon chair upon chair. It was astounding, the variety of chair. But nowhere did you get and say, oh, what is that? You recognize them all as chairs. Because you understand, without even knowing it, you understand the abstract conception of what a chair is. If we take the same mechanism and we apply it to everything, we start to realize, when you get a little deeper, like in golf, how does things actually work? Now it starts to click, and then now it makes playing golf a lot easier. I've really helped people considerably with their games, simply because they now suddenly were trying to do something different. The conception change, right? When you understand, you don't do defeating, self-defeating, inappropriate, inaccurate things that don't work, like in the case of golf, like trying to hit the ball up. You cannot do it. Your club cannot go under the ground and hit up, right? It can't work. No? So you stop trying to do the impossible. And we have this now. Golfers, what does it matter in golf? Not really. Does it matter in love? Does it matter in relationships? Absolutely. If you think you grow up in the superiority paradigm and you've been taught you've got to be superior, you've got to have dominance and all this, and you bring this into your relationship, how long is that going to last?
Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
It's not going to last very long. So you might not even realize your conception. You may have these innate conceptions, like from the superiority paradigm, that can severely affect your life and cause problems. And you say, well, why are we arguing? Well, really what you're doing, it's a fight for dominance, because you're still hooked onto this paradigm, right? And, yeah, right. Ask most couples, what did you argue about? I don't really know what we argued about. Just arguing, right? I don't even remember. It doesn't matter. Or they remember that it's like some nonsense. It doesn't matter. Why? When you understand the conception of it, it's a battle for dominance. You still have this need, this drive. You still think this is important. When you realize there are other ways to live rather than dominance, there's cooperation, collaboration. Wow, okay, yeah. Changes everything, right? Collaboration is way more successful, by the way, than individual dominance. Way more successful. Even when you have leadership, when everybody's collaborating, all the units are working independently. Right? Way more successful than no matter how good your leader is and saying do this, and everybody follows. Collaborative efforts, and when you have real sophisticated high-level units, this is what they're training, which is all about orders. And you get to things like SEAL teams. They learn to operate each as an individual, right? And they collaborate together. It's a way more effective deal, right? So it is, when you change your conceptions, it makes a difference to everything. And when you understand conceptuality, you get into further nuance like motivation, right? And now it gets really exciting.
Yes, this is getting really exciting. Okay, I know that, okay, because we have the analogies, and Syl is going into technical details in more detail. But of course, as we are reaching the last break of this show, we will try to summarize the whole concept at the end. So see you after the break.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Welcome back to the show with Syl and Beena, the Moreness Show. And before the break, I was actually continuously insisting that Syl give us something like, okay, yes, just a keyword, just a one-liner. And this is what I'm trying to get again. Syl, will you please just summarize the whole understanding of capital L learning and regular learning and the value and importance of language? Please, Syl.
Capital L learning is all about understanding rather than remembering. And we understand via utilizing the natural mechanisms of language. Our brain is all ready to elaborate. That's it. That's my definition, right? So capital L learning and how it's connected to language is we're focusing on understanding, utilizing language, the inherent mechanism of language. Right? Our brains are hardwired to generate language. So all we've got to do is use this mechanism. You take a word, a concept, and all words are concepts. You take a concept and then you understand what that concept means. Okay, I've now learned this word. Your brain remembers the word. It's very seldom when you really know a word that later in life you come, oh, what does that word mean again? Very seldom, unless it's something very technical, right?
Yes.
But typically, we don't forget what the word means. And that's the thing. So utilize this mechanism in your brain and take stuff and put a word to it. Give it a word. And like I was saying earlier, when I organized all the people in the 100,000 people in the army, brigades, regiments, right? I organized it, and those are all concepts which mean something. Right? How many people in a regiment? I don't really know. I have to go look it up. Right? It depends. I can make my army any size. It doesn't matter. When you start to break it down, the numbers automatically work themselves out. It doesn't matter. You don't need to remember.
Yes.
The concept is the important part. And that's the thing. Language is conceptual. All of it is. So your brain remembers the concept and the explanation, like tree. Beena never looked it up. So she couldn't remember what it says in the dictionary. She doesn't need to. Your brain automatically understands more than what you can sometimes know directly. But when asked, you can explain it. When I asked Beena what a tree is, she could explain it. If you incorporate this into your learning, rather than trying to remember every dictionary definition, if you want to learn the dictionary, and most of us know, many words in the dictionary. Okay, some we don't know, but we know a tremendous amount of words. Yeah. But do we remember the dictionary definition? No. we remember the concept. The explanation we can create as needed. Why? Because we understand what the concept means.
This
We
is very
understand what
interesting.
tree is.
This is
Right?
very interesting because uh, what language is, of course, it's a medium of communication. Okay, this is what we, okay, this is how we
As
communicate with
well
each other.
as, right?
Okay, yes, yes, this is how we communicate with each other. But also, language is something which gives you this opportunity to pass on or transfer or transmit or transmute, I don't know how to say that, data, information in a more structured and mutually accepted signs or symbols, because words are actually what are, or names, because we name things, we name feelings, we name different entities, we name things and objects and everything has name. Like, okay, sky is a name for something which is above the earth. Okay, earth is something like, okay, yes, we are sharing is just the name of the things which are mutually
Right.
accepted, with different,
But if
of
we,
course, when come back to the language, some are of course highly sophisticated, some are not that much.
yes,
But what we are doing here, the actual capital L language here is to name things precisely and then structure your sentences with those names in a specific order so you can communicate the other person in a more precise and accurate manner. This is the whole
now
understanding of
would
it.
you say, Beena,
Yes,
that communication first, is not the first benefit of language?
of course
It's a
not.
secondary benefit. The first
Okay.
benefit is understanding your world.
Yes. Yes.
That's how we make sense of the world, through language, right?
So what
By
we did
understanding.
actually, like, okay, I created a mixture or a combination of some alphabets or sounds, and then I said, okay, this is specific combination of sound I am associating with this particular object or thing.
There you
So
go.
this is
There
how
you go.
we
And the key to it is the abstract. Because imagine if I were to remember trees by their specific name, or like that lady who with cars, right? To her, cars weren't cars; they were Fords and Chevys and Hondas and Toyotas and Ferraris and
yes,
whatever, right? She had it all. That's a mess, and it caused a problem for her because she couldn't drive whatever she had learned to drive. So
yes.
she was using language poorly because she got
Hmm.
stuck in the lower level. She didn't take the abstract conception to the highest level, right? Which is motor vehicles. And you take, okay, a car and you got a forklift. It's still a motor vehicle. They all operate on the same principle. Yes?
Hmm.
Now, this is the key when you learn this part of language is conceptuality. And that's why I call the language of conceptuality. It's another word for way of impeccable. Learn to conceptualize. And
Hmm.
now, what are you learning? You are learning to make sense of everything. Then you can communicate more easily. Why? Because you actually understand what you're talking about. Easy to communicate when you understand. When you're just remembering stuff by rote, then communication can be very difficult sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes. And why we need communication, this is a completely different understanding now. And maybe at some point we are
Yes.
going to do that why we have this need to communicate, why it is so important, so vital for human
All right.
beings, and
We'll
of
talk
course,
about,
all other beings
yeah.
also, that we want to communicate. Okay, so today's discussion was
We'll do that
about,
next week, Weena.
okay,
Since
we'll
this
see
week were
that.
two L's, right?
Yes,
We had
yes,
learning and language. So next
yes.
week, we are, just to summarize this before I go to next week. When you start to understand learning and language is one and the same thing.
Hmm.
Oh, and when I acquire language, I learned.
Hmm.
That is how I understood the world. When you start to equate learning with understanding rather than memory, this changes everything, right? And when you really realize this, wow, language is a way for me to actually conceive of the world, make sense of the world, and not just have it to be this incredible mass of data. Language is how I make sense of the world, how I can relate to it, how I can process it. Right? And that's learning. Same thing. Yeah? Language learning, kind of the same thing. So next week we're going to talk about communication and collaboration and how it's connected. Just because they're two C's, they might not be quite as connected as learning and language, but I don't know, it's just fun. It's fun. Communication and collaboration. Now, Beena, what do you think?
Oh yes.
Unless you want to
Yes,
add another C in there, maybe.
Well, we'll see. We will see next week. But okay, this is
We will
interesting because
see.
I feel
We will see next.
yes, yes, but I don't feel today very much like satisfied with the sharing, because it is like, okay, I need more. I need more clarity. I need more structured understanding of the concept behind capital L learning. And this is the most interesting thing for me, that I don't feel satisfied. So this is going to be an open tab for me. And we might continue at some point again. We will continue with this. So thank you so much, Syl, for actually.
Are we out of time? Are we out of time?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I just wanted to say real quick, Beena. Learning and language are mechanisms for processing masses of data.
Okay. Okay.
Does that wrap it up for you?
Yes, a good wrap up. Yes, we will discuss more. Okay, so thank you so much, sir, for sharing all these things, and thank you so much the team behind this. And we will see you guys next week with some very interesting topic. I must say that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Maybe a different one.
Yes. See you next week.
This has been The Moreness Show with Syl and Beena. Tune in each week as they focus on bringing joy and peace of being to us all. Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold, Brave TV network. Powered by B2 Studios.